Seava, you are
Yes,
muted.
I'm
Yeah.
unmuted. All right.
All
I
right, so we're good to go then.
Yes, we are.
Um, well, basically, what I hoping to achieve with this was to bring the women together, start getting to know each other, and discuss like what can be done to take back your sovereignty. Um, the stuff I learned from an old Dakota, called himself a savage. Under international law, that's one of the classes of three physical beings. As savage, number one; person, number two. Your average Joe on the street that doesn't know who he is. You have a subclassification of the person called a private person, which in the European codes and ethics is the royalty, kings and queens. And you have an inhabitant, which is a third world citizen, which is what's commonly known as a treaty Indian in Canada and the States, for example, because they're not sovereign. There's no legitimate clan mother system of government in a prisoner of war concentration camp system of government. They go by an elective system of government, so there's no clan mothers, so there's no sovereignty. Um, but as I said, what I'm hoping to do is bring you women together to talk to each other, start to get to know each other. Um, the actual, to quote Meredith, as he says, it's nothing to make you sovereign, but you can lose your sovereignty very easily. They'll overwhelm you with their religion and their deception of their language in 6 months or less, even. So, three classes of beings: savage, person, inhabitant. What I am is a signatory Indian. Signatory Indian is a savage. Signatory is the one exact identifying term for a sovereign Indian, as opposed to the treaty Indian, prisoner of war Indian. As anyone outside of the white race doesn't qualify to be in a gens. That's why you come as tribal peoples. We all come from clans, not gens. Gens is the Romans, the ones that stepped aside. Before that, it goes way back to the Phoenician times. It's the Phoenicians. Phoenicians, phonies. Phony means imitator. Imitator means person. Just it's been the same people bloodlines for thousands of years. Literally the same people throughout history. It's just been an on again, off again battle as to who was in power in the world for different periods of time. The Romans were being defeated in warfare in 408 AD, were out of power, which is why when you look at what the white man teaches, civilized teaches as history, it's what they call the beginning of the Dark Ages. Dark Ages because they were no longer in power. So it was Dark Age for them. But now in Europe, at that point until 1491, tribal peoples were back in power. In 1491, the descendants of the Romans purchased back title to the old Holy Roman Empire. And that's when does the Renaissance, the Enlightenment begin? Around the 1490s. Because now they were back in power because they purchased back title to their old empire. So that's what that period of the Dark Ages in the medieval times that they call about. It had nothing to do with technology. It was just that they weren't in power, so it was a dark age for them till they got back in power. And coincidentally, it's what they called the Renaissance, the Enlightenment. They were now back in power. And then they proceeded to kill 200 million white tribal peoples in Europe before they came over here and then did the same thing to the Indians over here. They are, as Stuart says, I don't know how you would describe it, insane. Insane, evil, however you want to describe it, but they're not for the people. So there's two, as Meredith says, there's two definitions of sovereignty. There's the European definition of sovereignty, where they are on top and everyone else is below them, subject to them. And then there's the signatory, the creator's way, everybody's equal. And the Romans don't like that. They don't like being equal. They consider everybody outside of their own race as inferior to them, which is why that term genocide, for example, you can't use it. You want to talk about what they're doing to your people, any original peoples, it's not genocide. If you call it genocide, you're just wasting your paperwork and your breath, because you're telling them that you're mad at them for killing their own people. You ought to be mad at them for what they're doing to your own people, which is clanocide. All this stuff I'm explaining is just definitions of words and terms, really, in that English language, because their language, and they show you all this stuff in the movies. Pirates of the Caribbean, when he flipped the ship upside down, that's literally how their world is. Everything's upside down, back to front. Nothing means what you think it means. Literally, white, if you look it up, means black. Look up black, it means white. Exact opposite of what you would think it would mean, right? But this is how they deceive the people anyway, with the language. The point is, we all come from tribes, clans and tribes. Clans make up a tribe, and a tribe is a sovereign nation. If you look up the meaning of the word tribe in Webster's 1828, it says a nation of savages. Most people thinking savage is a derogatory term, but it's the correct legal term for a sovereign Indian, which is why they called the Indians savages when they first came over here, because at that point in time, they were still sovereign. They still had clans with head clan mothers, the sovereigns, the royalty equivalent to their royalty. That's why they called them, if you remember, the noble savage. What is noble? Nobility, royalty. They're telling you in these terms, right, as to what they're actually saying. It's just people then with the propaganda brainwashing, what they think a word means, and it's not what it really means, though. The point is, in law, you are whoever you say you are. They do use your own words against you, which ought to be really self-evident, because what's the thing if you get arrested by a cop? What do they say to you? Anything you say can and will be used against you. What's your name? Where do you live? Depending on how you answer those questions, you're going to keep or forfeit your sovereignty. Because if you're a sovereign Indian, then, as an example, think Dances with Wolves at the end of the movie when he was captured and they said something to him, pissed him off. He switched to speaking Sioux and said, I am Dances with Wolves, and you are not worth speaking to. Well, what they were showing you in the movie, prior to that, they were calling him John Dunbar, his white man name, and he was answering to it. You are whoever you say you are. They addressed him in that manner, he answered to it. But once he switched and said, I am Dances with Wolves, who was he then? He was no longer John Dunbar under the European jurisdiction. He was Dances with Wolves, a Sioux, different nation, different sovereignty, different jurisdiction. So the thing to bear in mind is they do use your own words against you, and you just got to know which terms you want to use to present yourself. So to give an idea of the power, though, of clan mothers, a story Meredith talks about, for example, in, you know how when a school bus is stopped, and if the lights are flashing, you don't go past the school bus, because you can go directly to jail for that one without even seeing a judge, right? Well, he says you can thank the clan mothers of the pueblos of New Mexico for that, because I guess back in the day, Indian school kids would get off of the bus, white man would drive by the school bus, hit the kid, kill him, and it was happening fairly often. So the clan mothers told their chief, the next white man that hits an Indian kid and kills him, you shoot him dead. Sure enough, two kids, I think, were getting off, crossing the front of the bus, going across the road. The guy passed the bus, hit them and killed them. The chief walked up to him and shot him dead in his car. Now, as an exercise of sovereignty and being sovereign, he was not charged with anything. What did the white man, the civilized, do? All civilized nations around the world made it illegal to go by a school bus when they stopped with the lights on, didn't they? That's where that comes from. The clan mothers' expression of authority. They'd had enough, shoot the next guy that does it. He did. The civilized changed their laws to abide by that. Because if you're sovereign, they can't touch you. You are on your territory. United States of America is bullshit. It does not exist. It doesn't have any land. All of what's called North America and South America is still Indian land. And I don't mean figuratively, I mean literally. But the thing is, under international law, the only way you can lay claim to what's known as cession jurisdiction, territorial jurisdiction, is with the women, clan mothers, because they hold title, cession jurisdiction, to the territories. So in order to be able to claim it as your land, claim it back, you've got to be the original system of government that the Creator put here from the beginning, which is clans, head clan mother, chief to speak on her behalf, members to her clan. Clans make up a tribe is a sovereign nation. Clan mothers hold cession jurisdiction, title to territory. Right now, majority of Indians, North and South America, don't know who they are in regards to the white man's way of expressing themselves. And they're classified as inhabitants. So they have no sovereigns. They have no clan mothers to hold title to their territories. So you literally have Roman clan mothers spread out all across North and South America, one every so many miles, and all around the British Empire, as it still exists. Never mind what people think of these free democratic countries, New Zealand and Australia, India, for example. There's a fraud, because that's not how you hold title. It's not through a democracy in the majority of the people. By law, the only way you can lay claim to land, title, is with clan mothers, title holders. And as Meredith says, don't kid yourself. The white man knows what clan mothers are because he has clan mothers of his own that he has to listen to. Because if you look up the meaning of the word clan, it says family. If you look up the meaning of the word gens, G-E-N-S, it means family. You look up the meaning of the word family, it means what you think it means, except that it's a slave appellation. If you say you're from the family of, for example, you are saying you are a slave. So the tribal peoples come from clans. The Romans come from gens. So when they talk of genocide, this is what I'm saying about where you can't apply it to the tribal peoples anywhere, it's because it's them. They come from gens. We come from clans. They're not allowed to do that to their own kind of people. Which brings me to thinking about what you mentioned the other day there, Stuart, about Germany not being bombed by the States and things in Germany, whereas Japan was. Well, genocide. For them to have done that to the Germans, who do qualify to come from gens, would have been genocide, which they can't do. The Japanese, being from the Yellow tribe, not being gens, considered inferior to them, got bombed. International law, right? People don't know who they are. So, clans make up a tribe. Tribe is a sovereign nation. Under international law, from what I learned from Meredith, and I can't speak for all tribes because each tribe has a different creation story, but he says there are 5 basic clans that make up a tribe, and a tribe is a sovereign nation. So for the Anishinaabe, the creation story was that there were 6 clans that came out of the sea, one of them being the Thunderbird clan. But whenever the Thunderbird looked at anything, it killed it with lightning from its eyes, so it went back into the sea, which left the 5 basic clans that make up a tribe. Now, the thing about all this that I'm telling you, the white man knows all of this. The civilized know this. They know tribal law inside out. They've been studying tribal peoples for thousands of years and taking notes, if you like. And the thing about those guys is they maintain their records. They have libraries with librarians who are known as the Plutarch, and their libraries go back 3,000 years or more. They can literally walk into their library, go back 3,000 years to the paperwork of 3,000 years ago, pull out the actual documentation of what was going on, who did what, who signed what. If you know anything about keeping institutional knowledge, that's a very long time to keep that kind of thing up. But that's what we're up against. That's what they have, that kind of institutional knowledge. It's kind of like the Vatican, you know, the miles of underground scrolls and books and things that are not accessible to the public. Yes, what do you think they're hiding? The truth, right? True knowledge of history. Any questions?
I have not a question, but to add to that, I like the example you gave of what I mentioned the other day is how come Japan was bombed and not Germany when you compare the say the crimes against humanity, if you wanna say that. You know, when we look at the history, it's much different than what the way that they pretend it to be currently. You know, even if when they're talking about World War II, that they're only talking about after. They talk about the outcome. They don't talk about what led up to it, what was the cause to it, you know, what was the true issue there. So anybody knows today of World War II is they don't know of what the causes were. They don't know what the circumstances were that the people had to live in prior to it. They only know what the outcome is. And when we consider that what we all know who writes history is the people who won in war. So then it tells you that then it's the war mentality that is telling everybody what the reality is, as opposed to what their fantasy construct is, what they identify as the reality. But the people still have this living record, like what you said, as to the way that they keep records. You know, you can go and pull out a scroll or pull out a file or pull something out of the cloud now. Well, we also have those living records. It's in the people. It's in the blood. It's in the DNA. It's in the knowledge of the ceremonies, the knowledge of law. Because when we find that for us, we don't look at the white man, the white people, as our enemy or something that's not supposed to be here. We know that the white man, the white people, are in fact our sisters and brothers. But the white people have been usurped by this crazy, corrupt mentality of warmongerism. And it's overpowered the white people first. So when we look at that history, that they can pull up a scroll from 3,000 years ago and say, this is what happened, we know that what they're pulling up is a lie. It's a fabrication. And so this is our first line of defense is to, like what you said in the movie Dances with Wolves, as to what he done. At a certain point, he just switched. It's like he switched tracks. No longer is he that person. Now he's this person. How is he this person? Quite simply by not just identifying that, but by being it. And it's in his words. He's just stopped talking the English, and he started talking Lakota. So for in the here and now, just to address something that Lisa said as to, I forget the exact wording or how you identified it, but basically we're all pretty much right now living in a lie. We're in a mess, and pretty much nobody knows how to do it. So we got to return somehow back to a matrilineal baseline. We got to get back to, if we're thinking of a positive and a negative scale, we are in the negative. So our goal, of course, is to get to the +10 into positive. But from -10, our primary goal is to get to the baseline, the neutral spot, where we undo all the negative in us. So what we identify needs to be done by everyone on Earth is to quite simply stop. I'm not saying stop using the English. I say we have to use the English. Not that it's the authoritative language, but that it is the poison that has destroyed the world. And so our approach here, or our perception of how to deal with it, is to utilize it the same way that rattlesnake venom is used to cure the rattlesnake bite. So it's the same thing. So we look at using the English to undo where the mind is right now in the -10, and we use the English to get to the neutral spot, and then from there we can, if we chose to use English, fine. But we probably, everyone on Earth would return to their natural language. So one of the first things that we say needs to be done is quite simply uncolonizing our mind. So when we get together and we say something like brothers and sisters, stop saying that. Say sisters and brothers. When we are talking about, say, like in the religious sense of man or woman, in the religious sense, it identifies that man is first. So what we got to do is, whenever we're in conversation like that, is to not talk that way, but to identify the life giver as the primary. And so if we start teaching our children this, then our children will grow up to be men who will not say brothers and sisters, who will always say, without even thinking about it, sisters and brothers, which means that in their mind, the individual is constantly putting the life giver first, which means they are aligning themselves with the fact of that the life givers are the primary. So the way to undo the religified construct of male dominance, that male, he's so good, he puts himself before his mother, so the way to undo that is for the women to teach their children, their sons, to constantly say sisters and brothers, to constantly say mother and father, not father and mother, not boys and girls, girls and boys, to constantly do that, so that in the person who is speaking, which their voice is going out to the world, they are always saying things in the proper order. Where right now, we're not doing that because we're in the -10. And like you said, that it's like that pirate ship being turned upside down and backwards, that we perceive ourselves as being in the +10, where the reality is we're in the -10 because of just quite simply the way that the words flow out of our mouths. Now, the words that we're using is English. And so like you identify all the time, is that the people just don't realize what they're saying when they're speaking English. So we get command of the words that we are putting out into the world first in the language that has destroyed the world. so that we get every little boy, because this is where it has to happen, in the minds of the boys, in the minds of men, so that those little boys will grow up to be respectful of their mother, constantly always putting the life giver as the primary, even stating it like what I'm stating right now, and always in our ceremony. So if the women are teaching the sons properly, then the ceremonies that the sons will carry out won't be from a male I'm so great perspective, like a self-glorification process of man creating God in man's image. So by undoing the screwed upness that they have put into people's minds, by properly putting it in the right order, it will have the gradual effect in society. Because what I see whenever I'm confronting people on these levels, and one of these things is a handshake. This is male dominance. This is our mother, because it's from the heart. It's the main artery. And this is the reason why religion went after anybody who's left-handed, because it's a threat to them, because it's matrilineal. It's the life giver. And so we put these words into the mouths of our young boys. They'll speak it. And then when they're speaking it, other people are going to hear it. And when males hear it, they're going to have a hard time to not conform to that, because those males are linked to females. And so once females start to themselves apply it to themselves, that they're the primary, putting themselves first as not girls, not boys and girls, but as girls and boys, as female and male, then the sooner we start doing this, then the people will, the negative people, the male dominant people, will become confronted by that. Because one of the main things that I get confronted with is shaking people's hands. They put their hand out. Males love to put their right hand out, and when I put my left hand out, they go like this, and they try to go around my left hand and try to shake my right hand. And I put my hand there, and these, of course, I'm talking about European males who are, I'd say, more new to being here in Turtle Island than European males who have been here, say, like for a few generations or something, So these ones are still male dominant from their old world, and they're carrying these ways. So when I put my left hand there to shake their hand and they try to avoid it, then it comes to a conflict that's on the lowest levels of conflict, that is like almost like a debate. Oh, why do you do that? So then I have to explain to them. And I always explain that a right-handed handshake is a male-dominant handshake of destruction, because it was created as a process of how to seal a deal. So it is a corrupted, it's a process of corruption in the first place. Whereas the left-handed handshake is like a contract of friendship, because it comes from the heart, the main artery. This is our mother, and we cannot lie in front of our mother. So the more that you get young boys, even just saying this, if they hear it from the time that they're old enough to start understanding stuff, so let's say 3 years old, if they're hearing it from that time, that the life givers are the primary. I don't shake hands right-handed. I shake hands left-handed, and explain the reasons why. Then those young boys will be explaining the same reason why. And so we're looking at a process of how to change something that seems unchangeable right now. We seem to be stuck in a death spiral here that seemingly that no one on earth knows the way out of. But we all know the way out of it. It's just to stop. Just stop. So let's all just stop. First place is the easiest things in our speech, in our oration. Let's stop in our oration that continues within the male self-glorification process of creating God in his image. So let's stop identifying brothers and sisters and start identifying sisters and brothers. Start identifying the life giver is the primary. I am the secondary. The more males, young males that you get saying this, then imagine for you life givers who are older now and you've had your experience with males in this world. Now you got a history to look back on from when you were teenagers, you know, your first contact, and maybe it wasn't good, you know, or maybe you have a few relationships where you can say, wow, that's really male dominant, you know. Maybe you would have wished that you had a clan mother to guide you through things like that. So imagine if when you were a teenager, if you would have been exposed to males who were saying of their mothers that my mother is the primary and I am the secondary. Just to have a male say that, you know that in their mind, even if it's just a show, even right now, if I'm just saying that as a show to project to you is that, oh, look, I'm trying to break away from male dominance. Even if it's just a show, then that's what you're exposed to. So just think, prior, it's male dominant corruption. Afterwards, even if it's a show, it's no longer male dominant corruption. At least we're trying to show a compliance with the reality of creation, that the life giver is primary. So even if it is just a show in that individual, you, the life giver, won't be exposed to the negatives anymore. So slowly but surely, we look at this process of that from here. It's not going to be any of us that's going to benefit. It's going to be us that has to jump through hoops of fire to correct it. And we're going to get burnt and we're going to get rubbed the wrong way. But we're the ones that got to do it. Our children aren't going to be the ones that are going to have to do it. If we do it, then they don't have to fight that monster. We should fight the monster that we don't want our children to fight. And so by this approach in everything in our lives, whatever it is in your daily life, for myself, I'm involved in my whole life is ceremony. I'm going from one ceremony to the next. I'm going from one law recital to the next. I'm going from one council to the next. So this is my life pretty much all the time. I'm no longer engaged in that activity of destroying our Mother Earth. I'm no longer working for the system. And so I make my living now in a different way, which I can say, almost like I don't even know how I'm making my living. Because to pull away from that system of male dominance and the destruction of our Mother Earth, as that this is the concept of how we put food on the table, by digging up the earth, cutting down the trees, polluting the sky, destroying the water. This is how we eat. This is an insane behavior. So an addressal of all these things first in the mind. So it means that the women, the grandmothers, have to speak to their grandsons, teach them these ways, speak to them all the time about great law of peace. This is what was done with me. I was so fortunate to be raised matrilineal that I was with my grandmother, my aunts, and all women ever since I can remember, because that's where my mother had me. And this is where all the women there were constantly, I can say, teaching me, like as if I was, I can say like I was their man in this world. Not their man in the concept that people might have today, you know, like, oh, that's my boyfriend or something. No, but I was their man in as far as they were building me as a child to be the man that they wanted in the world. And so in my ceremonies, everybody who's been exposed to them knows that I'm constantly addressing the the false concept of the male self-glorification process of creating a false God in a man's image. So I'm constantly addressing these things, and in ceremony, teaching the young boys, my sons primarily, this is my primary concern, to teach my sons how to have the proper perception of the life givers by not putting this false image there of, again, male self-glorification, but through putting a whole bunch of tiny little concepts into their mind. Tiny little concept like shake hands left-handed. Tiny little concept of identifying girls and boys, not boys and girls. Of identifying, and here's something that I always say in the ceremonies, that a guy will never get a thank you on this, but if you're in a woman's house, put the toilet bowl seat down. I don't care if you're in a house and there's one woman there and it's not her house, you put the toilet bowl seat down. She won't realize it, that you've done that. She'll only realize when you don't do that. And when you don't do it, she will take action on that. So this is what women have to start gauging as to what they got to do to pull out of these false constructs in the mind that puts these false perceptions, but at the same time gauge themselves as to the movement away from that -10 place. You can't just say that, well, these things that I'm saying are like a correction. No, you have to have a solid like proof or evidence of that you have moved away from -10 and you move to -9 and so on and so on. So a lot of little checks and balances like this, what we got to start doing. No disrespect to anyone here, but when you open, you did say, I forget if you said boys and girls or men and women, whatever, but it was a male that you put first. So the women can't do that. Don't do that, because if you do, your sons are going to do that. And then it's not going to be you that's going to feel the abrasiveness. It's going to be the girlfriends that they can never keep, that they can never stay with, and not knowing why. How come you can never hold a relationship? It's because of these crazy concepts of male dominance, religified thinking, put into young males, that without you even having to realize it, is that women are giving birth to sons, and in religions, those sons are ticking time bombs for women, for the mothers, waiting to go off, where until that little child of yours, that little boy that you gave birth to, that you loved, that you took care of, until that religion takes his mind and puts him above you, which is what, around age 4 or 5, when he's able to realize the lies that are fed into his brain through religion. When he realizes those by speaking those things, that's when the mother gets burnt. So the mother has to ensure that he doesn't do that. So one last thing I'll say on this is that the things also, just like speaking, then it's taking back. So we take back meanings of words by putting proper sentences there that provides the concept. Because right now, the English words, there's no word to actually describe the things. So we have to put a bunch of words together to create the concept. So in a taking back, what the women, the life givers, have to put into the minds of their young boys is that the ceremony, it belongs to the people. It does not belong to one person to rule over, or to say that the ceremony has to take place in this building or that place. No, the ceremony belongs to the people. So it's time for the people to take those ceremonies back and to put them in their proper matrilineal order. So the people have to pull themselves out of those false constructed places like churches, temples, synagogues, whatever, because this is where male dominance is created. Pull out of there, and the women have to start presiding over the ceremonies of the first and easiest ceremonies to return to, of course, is the moon ceremonies, because this is the woman's cyclical ceremonies, her own cyclical process. So just an alignment to the moon ceremonies back into the public, where the women are managing these things, where the women are controlling the ceremony, not to allow male to control it or to have the male crazy thinking, in there. So take back ceremonies, get it out of those churches, those temples, those synagogues, or whatever else you want to call those things. Take them out of there and start doing the ceremonies collectively outside again, where people can see it. So this will be the same effect of like what the tsunami was. When people will see it, then they'll start to learn how to interact with it. It will be revived. Yeah, so yeah, I'll leave it at that. No, yeah.
So in a lawful sense, and I'm sorry, I think that Tracy's with us now, but the restoration of the matriarchs and the clans up north, the creation of the Life Givers Nation as a real nation, is that a process that can actually unfold to have lawful standing? And how does that take place?
Okay, well, lawful standing, where is it? What is law? It's basically what we recognize, what we can establish in our mind through logic and common sense as to what is the common denominator for all of us on any given subject. So law is what is in our mind, what we perceive. So then it's just an application of it. And this is quite simply just a brainwashing, almost like having a barrier without having an actual physical barrier. It's just a construct in the mind that everybody is afraid to enact law. We all know common sense. Okay, I'll just say, for instance, the example of what's on the world stage right now. You know that I think there was a few different votes in the United Nations Security Council to try to push for a ceasefire. And of course, the United States vetoed it. But now today, there's a watered down version of it. And it's not a good version. It doesn't mean anything because it's not a ceasefire. It says, let's give more aid. So let's give more aid is actually an acceptance of more bombing. So here is the fact or the example of where everyone on earth knows common sense, logic, and knows what law is, but everybody is afraid right now. Why is everybody afraid? If you said anything right now in the world, you'd be anti-Jewish. You'd be anti-Semitic. Oh yeah, is that when people speak against corruption and genocide, or the murder of at least 20,000 people while the world is watching? Well, we're afraid now because somehow that Zionist control has filtered or spread its control all around the world, preventing logic, common sense, law from being our driving force. So right now, everyone in the non-native society is subdued. You can't think law right now. You can't think common sense. You can't think logic. This is the backwards, upside down thing that was identified of that pirate ship being turned over upside down. And so, quite simply, all we got to do is start talking within that logic, start applying it. When we do that, the public pressure, of course, there'll be somebody there to argue it, but if we do it in the right way, it will stay within just that that field or area of discussion, as opposed to what we're seeing right now. Like, say, for instance, the violence that the Zionist supporters are inflicting upon all the Ivy League schools in the so-called United States. Now, that's violence. When there's a billionaire that is constantly donating money to Harvard, and then all of a sudden, because there's a protest by some students against the Zionist genocide on the Palestinians, then he pulls his economic support. That is violence. And this is what everybody is accepting, that the Zionists and the supporters of the Zionists can be violent. But everybody else, what can you do? Nothing. We have to accept their violence. We are living in a world of fear. We're living in truly that backwards, upside down scenario. And so, how do we get out of it? Just quite simply do it. Each person, start living it, start thinking it, start talking it, start being it. We cannot allow ourselves to be in the scenario of where all of humanity is going to walk through those oven doors. Because this is what we're doing right now by keeping our mouth shut, by being afraid to speak out. And so to have matrilineal authority return, it has to be based on everyone exercising, no longer being afraid. Speak it, live it, do it. Get the ceremonies back outside in the public for everybody to see. Have the women in charge of those ceremonies. Have their young boys supporting and making sure that everything that the life givers are identifying, that the males are going to accommodate this. This is what we got to start doing. This means your children, your grandchildren. But look at us. The minds that want this change, do we have children? Or are our children young enough to be able to teach them this and to be able to build them up? Our children aren't young enough for that anymore. So we're looking at people who are older, who have been dragged through the gauntlet and who know logic and common sense, but we don't have the foundational support for this, which means the face is yet beneath the earth. Do you know who has our foundational support? Who has our faces yet beneath the earth? These Zionists that are pushing war everywhere. They have our faces yet beneath the earth. We're going to we can have children right now today. And those children, big deal, they're born from us. You know who's going to be controlling them. So it's a battle for our humanity. It's a battle for our children to make sure that there is no more of these male-dominant, warmongering mentality put into their minds. So we all got to be brave enough to take the action in our own house. And then when we can do it in our own house, then we can help our neighbor. So each of us, let's do that in our own house, and this will strengthen, fortify us And once we are fortified in logic and common sense, then we'll be able to address things collectively. We will have the foundational support. We got to create it. And we can only create it out of our own actions. So matrilineal, return to it, undoing of all the craziness on our Mother Earth. For myself, I don't know, maybe it was a little easier for me because of the upbringing that I had, the exposure that I had to law, and basically what my mother taught me. So it's a matter of each of us just coming to the center and taking, sharing with each other the best of what we know that we bring to the table. Kind of like, for those of you who know or who remember Bruce Lee and what he said of all these different disciplines, you know, he took the best from each one. He didn't stay committed just to one, because this is where we gotta be now. If we want to survive, we gotta, I said this many times, we gotta pull a rabbit out of a hat. And right now, me on my own, with my people, we can't do it. And use on your own with the people that you got, you can't do it. Nobody on earth can do it. Look how we're subdued. So we got to pull a rabbit out of a hat, out of a different frame of thinking, out of like just me, and go back to the collective. And the only way to collective, again, is put mother first in everything. Yeah, no.
May I share? I thank you, both Longhouse as well as Eagle Eye, on your expertise. Eagle Eye, especially with the sovereignty movement. We saw the sovereignty movement start very strongly in Hawaii in 1970 to gain back that indigenous sovereignty there. James O'Keefe talks about that quite a bit, and Longhouse as well as at matriarchal lineages. We are getting to that point at this time. So I have a couple of thoughts, and it's up to those who may resonate to those thoughts. When that handshake comes, and you're right, that right hand is usually the one that goes out, that dominant hand. All you need to do is the next time you put your right out, you take your left hand, the feminine side, and put right on top and shake. This matriarchal energy is right on top. Always reach. Thank you. And they know this matriarchal lineage and energy is now on top. And when we go to the sovereignty movement and all this, their courts are set up, and he's correct. Eagle Eye is correct. Those are all, like I said, misspeak or misinformation in the language that they use. So we don't fight in their courts because they will win. So what ends up happening is people are very, like I said, very few people realize this. And I've been teaching and discussing this on radio shows since the 1980s to the current time. What ends up happening at this time is we need to not comply with the colonial laws. All we do is non-compliance. That's important. But most people don't realize 150 people, at least in North America, in an unincorporated area in the US and unorganized land in the in Canada. All you need to do is have 150 people. They make their own laws, their own rules, and they are not bothered by bureaucracy. That's how it really works, but nobody knows that. And so that's one point to gain that unification, to find that. And the matriarchal lineage as a, how can I say it, life giver. It's important that we teach our young males the energy of both. Their intuition is the feminine side of themselves. Their actions are the male side. And for women, our intuition is great. But we need to take actions in the highest ways, not the lowest. We don't fight them on their level. We don't treat them in the same way. And we know for the last 2,500 years, women have been suppressed. The life givers have been suppressed for the last 2,500 years. That's about to end. And now you see the corporations are trying to straighten it out with having women CEOs. I've been self-employed in my own since the 80s, okay? So I don't comply. I don't fight. I don't need to fight. That's what they do. They want to pull you to their energy. They also want to make you mad and angry. That's their energy. You don't have to. You can be kind, and that life-giving energy that you brought, that divine energy from Mother Earth, Mother God, Father God, Creator, all in the highest use, and then apply it to each person, as you said, Longhouse, correct. in your own individual life, take those actions. As well as Eagle Eye said, remember that they're doing a double talk, misspeak. And so you can't listen. You have to really discern what's being said. When they say, do you understand? No, you don't. I don't stand under those laws. I do not stand under. Okay, but the whole point is you now see the whole world is finally moving. We are it was never meant to be top-down control in the planet, male dominant. Not ever in the 10.5 million years that humankind have been on the planet. It was always meant. It is this way because, as we term it, the bottom-ups did not rise. We did nothing to stop it. We just went ahead with our lives. And so what we're doing now is saying, no, there's no compliance. We don't have to argue with them. We don't have to be angry at them. We have to view it objectively and then take the representation that we need in those new, like I said, collectives, those united areas around the world, not just in North America, not just in Canada, not just in these areas we're talking about. And so representing that. But we go back to the time of the 40s and 50s. It was yes, ma'am. It was ladies first. It was girls and boys come over here. And all of a sudden that changed. And that was all the plan, unfortunately, by the so-called powers that should not be. Now, we know that they're losing ground and they recognize it. They're very few. And our energy on the collective is growing stronger. And I beautifully appreciate Longhouse's support for the matriarchal lineage, as well as Eagle Eye support and all the women represented here. But as we take this generation back to the balance of the two, one is not better than the other. They are equally with differences that are qualifications that are necessary on Mother Earth and this planet to run more effectively. And it is starting. If we look at even just astrologically to everything, there's a time and a season and a reason. Just that, the old structures, the male-dominated structures, governments, corporations are being pulled down at this time. We have just entered that beautiful Aquarian age that we talked about for decades since the 60s. So it is now in place. The true highest energy of Aquarian age is brotherhood, sisterhood, humankind. Okay, when I say brotherhood, as Longhouse said, that word has been utilized for 25 years. So we say humankind. It is for that evolutionary journey now happening, and it's starting, and you can feel it right now. Okay, the second is compassion, which as a life giver, that's what we do. We give life. Okay, we understand that our brothers didn't know better for the last 2,500 years and thought this is the way they play. And this is, we all know psychologically, the warmongering is a control mechanism that they like to control. They fall in love with the domination and control. And all like I said, the weaponry is all about male ejaculation. We understand this, okay? And they've started every war since we can begin, from the Napoleonic Wars, and they have been the thrill for this. But this is now ending in this new Aquarian time frame. And Aquarius also rules communities. Now, on the lowest end, it rules AI. It rules internet, computer. Well, those things, when Mother Earth makes, as she's doing her changes, those things will be knocked out. So we have no choice but to go back to the ways we were before in our sovereignty, in our indigenous quality. And 2/3 of the world population today is indigenous. 2/3. We are the largest portion of the world population. There's no mistake here. So what we end up doing is we don't, like I said, send out the same energy they did: anger, hate, dominance, and control. What we do is we do it in the highest way. So again, from that shape, we don't force them. What we do is thank you, and now this is on top. So they recognize, without realizing it, your energy is speaking right to them. So we speak as females on the energetic level, always have. We can feel Mother Earth. We can feel the child when they're in another room. We can see you behind with eyes behind our head. That has always been operating for the life givers. And so men are hopefully will be taught this quality inside self, not as dominant as it is in the life giver. But we don't need to fight them and do their same thing. And adding anger to them doesn't even work. It lowers your vibration. Why lower yours for their pattern? That's what they want you to do, is get angry at them. But they're not expecting you to unite in the strength and take hold. And that is going to be pulled down. This is the end of as I said, that Capricornian age of Capricorn is now age of Aquarius. The people, humankind, community, groups, equality. And that's what's happening today. So I love that the knowledge and the information both have gleaned. You're on the right track. Now everyone needs to take action in that way, but without harm to others. That was the old way. Without, how can I say it, dominating or having to kill, as he said, getting rid of those peoples. And we know that's all contrived. Those are plans that they've been enforced, and I have that confirmed. I ran into a gentleman that was part of the elite for decades in all the meetings. And he, again, confirmed everything you're saying. All their plans have been on the table for decades. This is nothing new to them. They do the drip method, and everybody else has fallen for it, but you have not. So to inspire all your, how can I say it, your humankind, all your peoples, which are all of us, the 2/3 of the world, they are crumbling, and they think they're going to continue with their plans. It will not work. Mother Earth will always win. I don't care how much HARP weaponry they think they can put up, Mother Earth always wins. She goes through her natural, normal cycle of great change. And this is important for us to recognize. We are right here on the precipice of great change. We will not see the need or be able to do this beautiful utilization of the Zoom or online quality after a time. And that's that rebuilding time that's coming rather rapidly. And we have no fear. There's no time for fear, because you see, fear blocks intuition. And that is exactly what we need. And the life givers are number one with intuition. This is extremely important as we move forward in the highest way. So we respect our brothers here, and we respect ourselves, is what I think Longhouse was saying as well, as Eagle Eye, and see what they're really doing. Excellent. And thank you very much for allowing me this time.
I'd like to say something there about concepts of the word human. I'm sure Eagle Eye has a breakdown of that to identify that human is a male, so for even when women or when any male says human, we're actually talking about male. We're not talking about our species, we're talking about males. So
and when I say humankind, there's a difference. When you add kind, that is the life-giving energy. The kindness that comes from a mother that nurtures. She doesn't have war. Humankind doesn't have war. There's no need to kill to dominate. Thank you.
This is what I'm addressing, is the word human. Now, as Eagle Eye points out many times, that we use words that we think are fitting what we're saying at the time, but you break down the word human, it's a male thing, and we could say humankind, and it's still a male thing. And then if it's humankind, then it's women within that concept of the male.
May I ask your suggestion on how we should call the peoples of the planet at this time?
Yeah,
Could I interject?
This is what I'm pointing out, bringing up about the.
What should we call all the people on the planet at this time?
For us, our reference to ourselves, of all the people who live on the land, they always just called themselves the people. That's it. But now we're talking about in English, so the reality is they didn't say the people, but it translates to basically kind of meaning that in English. But the true translation for us, the term is Ungwe Hungwe, and this means true being. So it doesn't identify us as like this concept of a human, where there's a man and a woman. No, the true being identifies us within, it's a level of consciousness realized within the collective body of our Mother Earth. And so the true being finds their consciousness within that collective. So the true being is not a human. A true being is a being that has risen to their consciousness out of the collective of which we are. I'm an elephant, I'm a cow, I'm a duck, I'm all these things all at once, because this is what makes up the whole planet. And the whole planet is what makes us up and gives us our collective consciousness. So references have to be proper in every language. which means that all the people, whatever their language that they're speaking, they have to master it and have their children speaking proper terminologies, whether it's Russian, Japanese, English, whatever, so that eventually all languages will be speaking correctly again. So here, a suggestion is, of course, it's not the law. A suggestion is to not refer to ourselves as humans, but to refer to us as true beings. A being that, again, has risen out of the collective, thinks collectively, knows and understands that our species is not limited to what this concept is of a woman and a man. Because to be a woman and a man, we have to have our collective knowledge of, again, that elephant, that duck, that mouse, that worm. Because again, all of these things is what will, what we relate to, and then what either will rule over it or else will be conducive to it. So it's all rooted again in the concepts, the way that we perceive ourselves, look at ourselves, identify ourselves. So
of the planet.
yeah, one example is that what we've been doing for a while is looking at terminologies that are, you could say, are illegal. And one of these terminologies that we identify as illegal, to the point of where I'll say to everybody, to every life giver, if you ever hear a male doctor saying to you about or giving reference to your hormonal imbalance, slap his face. Because terminology of a hormonal imbalance and identifying this within the women is a male dominant corruption that reverses our knowledge of what is being referenced. Because when a doctor from a medical industry, which is male dominant, even if it's a woman doctor, that they are going to have this reference of hormonal imbalance, and it's giving reference to the woman's reproductive system. So when we think of this, that we are calling that an imbalance. And the reason why that the male dominant medical industry calls it an imbalance is because they quite simply looked at males first. Now, we can go back to that painting, I don't know who it was by, Rembrandt or whoever, you know, like when they're cutting open that first male subject, you know, they had a cadaver on the table. There's a bunch of guys that look like they're in the time of Renaissance, and they're cutting this guy open on the table. So this is what the corruption of the male dominant medical industry has done. They first looked at the male, and then when they looked at the female, they seen that, well, hey, the female, she's got all this stuff going on in her that we don't have. And so he calls it an imbalance because it's not happening in us males. But we're the ones that are not balanced, because when you consider quite simple mathematics here, is that when there is one thing and something grows from that, then that means the thing that grows from it is, it's not as complete as the original thing. And so here, the original thing, quite simply, is the life giver, a woman. And the secondary thing is a life protector, a male. So we males are the ones that have the imbalance. Obviously, look at the reference here. It's to the woman's reproductive system. This obviously is a perfect balance because it's how all of us came into this world. But then what do the males do? The males are imbalanced because they turn around and kill all of that which the life giver has created. So the real imbalance is within the male mind, and the real balance is within the life giver. So when we see concepts that are there to, or wordings, references, to give false concepts in the minds of especially young girls, How many young girls, at what age? No, I don't know because I'm not a girl. At what age does a girl first hear that she has an imbalance, a hormonal imbalance within her? How old is she? 12, 13, maybe, I don't know. You're probably hearing it when you're close to your moon time. You know, the first time you're hearing of it, maybe in, let's see, what grade would that be? Grade 7, maybe? I don't know. Only you life givers would be able to answer that as to when's the first time you heard this. So just think, at that age, you're a young girl, and it's being hammered into your head that you have a hormonal imbalance. But it's the thing that brings all life. Isn't that crazy? That is crazy. So concepts like this that were created to turn our ship upside down and backwards, we gotta search for these things and we gotta undo them. So there's a lot of words already that we started addressing that are illegal words. And of course, the English language has most of the illegal words in the world. And so we got to search for them and address them. And the young girls will feel liberated, because when we address this with other girls, the first time that younger girls, the first time that they hear this hormonal imbalance, yeah, they can really relate to that. So just think, if you're a woman now who's already through your menopause and you're a grandmother, or you don't even have to be a grandmother, but you can see other young girls coming down the same path as you, with all the same lies that you had to put up with, that you had to live through. We got a responsibility to relieve this pressure off of the young life givers so that they are not going to have as much against them as what's there right now. So the young men that say that they love these life givers, is it true? Well, relatively speaking, but in the reality of all the negatives that have been piled on top of the life givers, how many males are going there to take that load off? Going there to, oh, here's this wrong concept we placed upon you of a hormonal imbalance. Let's take this off of you. How many males are doing this? So together, we need minds that have already been dragged through the gauntlet. You know, the older women who know, who can say, oh, when I was younger, I wish I would have had a clan mother to prevent me from doing this or doing that. So we have to build in the mind a physical structure in that young girl's mind that will stand through the time of when she arrives at her adulthood, so that when she's there, she won't have any doubt, and she'll know precisely how to do it and what to address. And she'll take this first step that together, collectively, we have put there, addressing hormonal imbalance. She'll be able to use that as her first step, and it won't be all that much work, because we, in the here and now, are supposed to do that work for her. Alleviate the male dominance that is, in fact, restricting your faces yet beneath the earth. We must think multidimensionally in order to have our actions in the here and now to have the proper effect on the faces yet beneath the earth. They're not here yet, but yet we're reaching into the future across time, taking the food right out of their mouth. We're putting handcuffs on them. This is how, by addressing all of these things and more, once we're on this path, young women, young life givers they'll take off like a racehorse and seeing, yeah, here's another thing that we got to address. Here's another false concept that we got to tear down. All we got to do is get it started. Yeah, you know.
I want to take us back to the teachings of Meredith Quinn of Musa, and the principle that the matriarchs, that the clan mothers continue to be the holders of Session jurisdiction Turtle Island, north and south. And that, you know, we've come to you, Stuart, because you remain in the lineage and in the house, in the Longhouse, and that your ancestors were the ones who made treaty with the people when they came over. And so the principle has been that in strengthening, helping to strengthen your nation's sovereignty and coming in alliance with you and finding a way to return to our own tribal nature, to restore nations, to restore the original nations to their correct being is the path forward, that it's still there, that it can be restored. You know, I have a lot of friends, you know, who say, well, you know, become a state national, you know, how to get out from under US jurisdiction or Canadian jurisdiction, you know, but feeling that the only real way to do so is to return to a tribal system. And that's really the question, you know, is in a very practical sense. And I think that was something that Eagle and I had talked about in the past, you know, how, say, you know, how do the Lakota restore their matrilineal government so that it's nation to nation? Because right now, as you know, I mean, we're dealing with band councils, whether in Canada or the United States, which are not sovereign. So that, you know, really becomes the question. And that was the hope, you know, for the White Buffalo Nation, for the people of the four directions, white, black, yellow, red, to create a mechanism where we could come into alliance with original matrilineal nations, and so that we don't have to recreate the flaws of the Greco-Roman structure, you know, and you know, what is the practical means of getting there, you know, so that, you know, I mean, they shouldn't even be able to bring you into their court system at all, you know. How do we strengthen the matrilineal sovereignty in a real way that creates an alternative?
If I could answer to that, I'd like to respond to both of Antonia's and Stuart's points. Let me look at that hand. He just gave you the answer to that question, Lisa. You just do it. It's literally that simple. The people express their will. And for those may not know, when I talk to the technical terms, to their exact meanings. Every term I'm using is not by chance. It's to the understanding of what it actually means, okay? So by expressing your will as a people, in regards to the humankind, as I said, I'm a savage. And a savage is remote from human. I am not a human being at all, any way, shape, or form. I'm a savage. The Geneva Declaration of Human Rights, the rights of monsters, Because if you really get into the etymology, the human, it means you're a spendthrift. You can't take care of your financial affairs. You work your way back through the etymology. So you need a guardian to be appointed to take care of you. Child of the province in Canada, for example. Child of the state in the States. Same in the UK. Same in all of the civilized nations. Civilized. Civil law, Roman law. So they're telling you that they have white Roman clan mothers because they are all France, Spain, Germany, Italy, civilized nations. They're not hiding any of this. So I totally agree with what how Stuart said, actually, the people or the true beings, or, as myself, straight up savages. And for the white tribe on the other side there, barbarian, because barbarian literally means savage. Who were the Romans fighting? You watch the movies of the Romans. Who were they always fighting? Barbarians, weren't they? Telling you they're fighting tribal people. And, well, as I said, savage, remote from human. If you look at the etymology, savage comes from the word silvictus. Silvictus, those who live amongst the trees. Think of this movie Avatar. That movie was an international law lecture. The entire movie, not one single word and concept they conveyed in there was fiction or for no purpose. If you could go to an international law school and sit in on a class on international law, that movie was it. What did they call them at the beginning of the movie? Savages. Where did they live? Amongst the trees. What did he join? He joined their clan. They had a chief, didn't they? But the chief wasn't the boss, was he? His wife, the head clan mother, was the law. And she determined what was going to happen with him. Not what the chief said, but what she said is what went, right? The whole movie was law. Remember I was telling you 5 clans make up a tribe. When they decided to fight back, they sent out runners to the 4 other clans. Okay, 4 plus 1 makes how many? 5. So the human, no, not humankind either, just for my own self, because, as I said, I am remote from human. I know what that word means, and it's not what people think it means. But I mean, it's understandable because how many people really do know the depth of the etymology of the meanings of the terms, right? Totally everything's backwards. It was interesting, though, that you mentioned about like the society is what you're talking about there, Antonia, the 150 people and things. Well, that's exactly what we're talking about here right now. A society. Look at the society. Society is a nation. What is a tribe? A nation of savages. So a tribe is a nation. If you set your nation up, though, for example, in Anishinaabe, 5 clans, each has a head clan mother, each has a chief, and there's members to those clans, you have a sovereign nation. And that's the only thing that is sovereign is the women. And that's the only thing that that white man recognizes as sovereign is the women, because that's what they have themselves. They have clan mothers of their own that they have to listen to. Because remember, person means imitator. They're imitating the tribal way because they're imitating the creator's law. But even though for them that is their law. So back to that word savage, though. Savage, silvictus, silvictus, those who live amongst the trees. If you're living amongst the trees, then you're living under the law of nature. When you look at the animal kingdoms, right? All the animal kingdoms throughout nature, if you observe nature, you can make a rational deduction that nobody can deny. And this is what Stuart and I have been discussing a little bit about this word sovereign, because to my mind, there is such a thing as sovereign, and it is expressed and shown in nature. Because if you look at all the animal kingdoms, queen bee, queen ant, geese when they fly, deer, moose, elk, wolf, bear, all have a head female that runs the pack, the society, the nation. So just to my mind, not, you know, wishing to offend and trying to get into argument, but to come to an understanding, because law, as Stuart pointed out in the past, and I absolutely agree with him, does come from the creator and creation, which is my point. When you look at nature, that is what you find. The creator's system of government is the female rules. And nobody can deny that, because that is what you find in nature. So savage means you're living amongst the trees. You're living as an animal, a savage, which we all are, if you actually look up the meaning of the word animal. And I mean, that should be perfectly common sense to anyone to know that we are animals, right? Living, breathing, got control over your volition of you. Very simple things. But when you look up the meaning, it's interesting. Not a human being is on the end of the definition of an animal. So it's telling you then that human beings aren't animals either, right? So just like I said, the society thing, though, that's in regards to Seava, what you were saying about, is it possible? And that, yes, it is. So Stuart said, you exercise it. The manner of it is what Antonia is talking about, which is what I'm trying to get across. You just re-establish it. Literally, you just do it. But do it in the format of the clans, make up a tribe with head clan mothers. That is a sovereign nation. And those clan mothers hold title to their territory. The thing to understand is, under international law, there is the European codes and ethics of international law. And then there is the original codes and ethics of international law. The original is the creator's, is the supreme law of the land. The Europeans imitate it, but it is their law nonetheless. But this is where they get into defining themselves as from the gens and considering everyone else inferior to them, right? Which is like the Japanese Germans. Germans being from the white, they couldn't bomb them to the extent they did the Japanese, because the Japanese are not considered, they're considered inferior to them. All the other tribes are. Even they're, like I said, like you were saying, amongst themselves, they're the elite. They aren't even really the white tribal peoples. You know, they don't give a toss about them either. Obviously, they wiped out 200 million of them before they came over here. So savage Silvictus, living amongst the trees, that is what's known as the supreme law of the land. And that's what a treaty is. It's an agreement. If you look it up, United Nations website years ago, there was a section for meanings of terms. The very first term was treaty. It said treaty, an agreement between two sovereign nations, and then a period. Okay, the grammar of the language, very important. So what is a treaty? An agreement between two sovereign nations, and then a period. So that's it. That is it in its entirety. The paragraph went on to say, but, see, you've got to love these words now, right? But any international agreement can be called a treaty. So you can have international agreements that are called treaties because they are international agreements, but they are not necessarily a treaty. Because what is a sovereign nation? Clan mothers. A treaty is an agreement between clan mothers of different tribes. Period. But any international agreement can be called a treaty. Treaties 1 to 11 in Canada are international agreements. That's why they're called treaties. But they are not a treaty. They did not sign anything away. The Indians that signed those agreements, when they signed those agreements, were no longer sovereign Indians. They changed their system of governance from the clan mother to the elective system of governance, where they voted for a chief. So there's no sovereign there. to make an agreement. But because it was Indians signing it, that still makes it an international agreement, so you can call it a treaty. The deception, right, of these terms. So, yes, it can be done, Seava. It is literally just a matter, as Stuart says, people actually doing it. And this is what I've been trying to convey, the coming together of the people under their clan systems, because those clans then make up a tribe. And if you have those head clan mothers in place, you can literally take back title to your territory. And when you do that, you command the white man what he is to do. You don't suggest to the white man what he is to do, you command him. For instance, when we're dealing with their courts, if we're in their courts, and I'm not trying to upset here, Stuart, but the very fact that they've got you in court means they're not recognizing your sovereignty. Because if they were, you wouldn't be in their court, because you can't be in their court, because all their court is a domestic court of Canada, the Admiralty jurisdiction. As the true sovereign you are, they cannot see you. You're not in Canada. It's like you do not live on the reserve. Do you? Now, it is a trick question, because if you say that you do, well, then you just put yourself under their jurisdiction. Because to my mind, I thought you're living on the territory of your people, aren't you? It's
Yeah,
like, right. So there is no reserve. It's all still your land. You don't even give concept, acknowledgement to this reserve. It's like I mentioned to people sometimes, they talk of Canada, and I look at them and, what is this Canada you talk of, white man? Because that's literally the truth, right? What is this Canada you talk of? There is no Canada. There is no United States or United States. There is a United States, the corporation, the United States of America, the Republic, supposedly. None of that exists. None of it has cession jurisdiction. The Indians have never been defeated in warfare. Under international law, the only two ways you can lose your sovereignty: you are defeated, conquered in warfare, or you sign it away, which is why it's still all Indian land. Because all the treaties in the States and Canada supposedly signing it away weren't signed by sovereigns, were not signed by the clan mothers. So it hasn't been signed away. And you show me where the American Indian, signatory Indian, has been defeated in warfare. Because the last time I checked the history books, the last time the America went to war with the signatory Indian, it was a little thing called the Battle of the Little Big Horn, and a guy named Custer. And if you really look into history, the United States sent 4 armies to that engagement. Chief Gall ran off the first one when they attacked his village, wiped out his children and his women, drove him crazy, and he just pushed. He had the Americans on the run, scared for their lives, right? That was the first engagement. But the Yanks set the stage for that battle by doing that act, right, against the women and children. And if you can go through the history, right, but each successive time until they got up to Custer. Who lost? Because from what I remember, it was not the Indian. The United States still actually owes the Dakota Empire a treaty for that defeat. If the Dakotas really knew who they were still, they could take that to an international court and actually have that matter dealt with. So, yeah, it can be done. It's a matter of the people coming together, actually expressing their will. Because basic thing about law, really, all law is by consent. Period. Because if you don't consent to it, then it's not your law. And that applies even in the creator's system. Because a societal contract, from what Meredith wrote, when it was time for a head clan mother to be picked, if the old one died, for example, the whole clan got together and by 100% consensus agreed as to who the new head clan mother was. So by the very act of her clan family giving her that position and authority, she becomes the sovereign. because it's not so much that the people are sovereign, she is sovereign, and her sovereignty extends over the members of her clan. Without your head clan mother, you don't have a sovereign, and that's not in to disrespect anybody. That's just my understanding of the law, right? The women rule. So, and she gets that authority from the people by consent. All law is by consent. So even in the creator's system, it's still consent, because the people of the clan all 100% consensus. And this is the thing, right? It's not a democracy. It's not 99% even. It's 100%. Because if that woman's going to have the power of life and death over you, you get to have a say in that, don't you? So the whole clan would agree. But once it was agreed upon, then she becomes that. And she has that authority. And that's what those Romans recognize as sovereign. And if you have that, you can command them, and they will do it. In regards to your court case, though, Stuart, there's two things about an appeal, okay? An appeal means to beg. It's like in my own matters, very, as I said, similar thing to yours, only two cases different, right? But I was going to do an equity appeal, because I've got an appeal, I've got a perfect one laid out, right? How to do it. Thing about appeals, if you just make a regular appeal, you're going to bring forward the jurisdiction that the prosecutor brought in the first place, okay? You're just bringing it up to the Supreme Court. Well, you don't want to do that, because then you're still in the defendant's position in regards to the jurisdiction. If you really want to do an appeal, you want to do a de novo appeal. De novo. This is really important, Stuart, because you can still do this. A de novo is a new trial, but now you are the one setting the jurisdiction. You are the prosecutor. And the prosecutor in your last instance becomes the what? Defendant. You just take your case number that you have from whenever, you do a de novo appeal in the Supreme Court or Superior Court, as you call it, with that number, but now you get to set the jurisdiction. But as I said, the reason I didn't do that, I've got a perfect one I could do for equity, because I was learning about their equity courts, all their different law venues, right? Probate, admiralty, maritime, merchant, which is what they're using, the merchant, law merchant. To come back to the ultimate, I'm a savage. I don't give a flying about their jurisdiction. I know who they are, and they can kiss my ass if I'm going to beg them for anything, because that's what an appeal means, to beg. So that's why, even though I've got it all laid out and could have done it, I'm not going to, because I'd rather stand as the savage with the backing of the clan mother and tell them to go themselves. Honestly, what you ought to do is put in a notice and order. Quit fucking around with them. Just, pardon my French, tell them what they're going to do. Give them notice and order them what they are to do, my friend. Because you are the sovereign. But like I said, it's them terms, right? They deceive people. You don't want to be an appeal. Nobody does. Because then you're submitting to the jurisdiction of the court, because that's asking for a benefit from the court. By appealing, by begging them, you're submitting yourself to their jurisdiction right off the bat. So anyway, so they say you don't go there as that defendant and that. They didn't charge you. They charged the artificial entity anyway, Stuart Myiow, you know, all uppercase letters. That's not you, the living savage. Just got to turn it around a bit how you present yourself to them. Like I said, call yourself a savage. Let them know that you know who you are in their terminology, because they know what that term means, right? They do know what it means. As I said, when I first learned about this, I spoke with every head cop of every province. They all knew exactly what I was talking about. I spoke with the Prime Minister's political and international legal advisor for about an hour and a half one time. This was when Chrétien, I think, was still Prime Minister, so it's quite a few years ago. He confirmed all of these things I was telling you about: savages, persons, inhabitants, clan mothers, cursus amissus. That's another term I haven't brought up yet, but cursus amissus is what they, in their language, the head clan mother. Because they can't, what that means is it's a case not provided for in the law or statute to be governed by the common law. Now, this leads back to that civilized nation thing, right? They're all common law countries. The thing is, there's a few different common laws, but the original meaning of common law is usages and customs of immemorial antiquity. Ever hear of tribal custom and usage? That's what common law means. And what that means is clan mothers. So cursus omissus, a case that's not provided for in the law or statute, which would be your case, for instance, because they can't have jurisdiction over you. And as a judge said in one, it's in the great matriarch writings of Meredith's, there was a bunch of Sioux Indians claiming to be sovereign in the United States. What he told them was, we cannot bring the cursus omissus into a law or treaty. What he was telling them is that he couldn't bring a clan mother into the courts because they are the law. They're above the law. They are the law. Tribal custom and usage. Usage, repetition of an act over a long period of time, having a head clan mother system of government. Custom, the law that comes from usage. Her word is law. What are the local customs of the tribe? Whatever the clan mother says, right? Immemorial, out of memory, antiquity. Antiquity, antique, antique, primitive, primitive, original. So it says usages and customs of original times. Well, what was in the beginning? Tribes, original. So they're telling you, common law means clan mothers. And as I said, Canada is, it says itself, right? Common law country. So is United States, so is England. So they're telling you that they have clan mothers, which is what I was saying about the white Roman clan mothers. See, right now, my brother, you've got a white Roman clan mother that's laying claim to the title of your territory, same as all the other tribal peoples across North America, because the women that have the authority to fill that office and claim that title are classified as prisoners of war, inhabitants. And I know you like to use that word native, but truly, brother, you're just demeaning your own position when you do that, because then you're calling yourself an inhabitant. You're saying you're a third world citizen. That's what a native is. You're not a native. You're an American Indian in their legal terminology. There's a difference. You call yourself a native Indian, they can do to you whatever they want. Whatever you say can and will be used against you. Remember that. Quit using terms that are hurting you. Not genocide. If you want to talk about what they've done to your people, quit using genocide. It's clanocide. Period. Unless you do want to complain about what they're doing to their own people, well, then go ahead. But I thought you were concerned about what they've done to your people, not what they're doing to their own people. And like I said, same with native. Native is an inhabitant, third world citizen. And as we mentioned in the past about substantiating positions in law, that's some of the documentation I was showing you there, you know, that whether it gives the citations in the corpus juris secundum, etc., for these meanings of these terms, savage, person, inhabitant. See, when I'm talking this stuff, I'm not making it up, and I've got the case. So I don't like to say case law either, because there's no such thing as case law. It's not law. It's just case. It's a case. It's not law. But anyway, the citations of cases in there that point out these things that I'm talking about, right? As I said, there's a court case, Carroll versus Pathkiller. Some Indians were claiming to be sovereign. The judge told them, and it sounds like a joke, you cannot go to church on Sunday and be an Indian on Monday. He wasn't joking, he was making a legal statement, because these Indians were claiming to be sovereign Indians, but they were Christian. So they can't be sovereign Indians, because religion means law, Religion doesn't mean what people think it means if you break down the term. It just literally means law. So whatever your law is, your religion is your law. So if you claim to be Christian, Catholic, or anything else other than the original, then you're not original, and you're not sovereign. So your talk about is the original, the way that's what you want. You just got to express that to them. Like I said, quit playing around with them, man. Don't use their terms that put you in a wrong spot. Call yourself a savage. That's what you are. Let them know that you know you're a savage and you're done playing their games and you're going to tell them what they're going to do. Give them a notice and order, just very simple. And sign, like I said, by witnesses as well in their terminology. Verifiers is better because witness again has a different meaning. But that's all I wanted to say on that just for the moment. I'd like to hear what Eva had to say as well, and anybody else's thoughts, and Antonia, what you were saying as well.
Before we go to someone else, I want to address the things that you just said directly to me.
Yeah.
My case, or our case, this thing is really playing out very different than what anybody would ever expect. Where it sits right now, and I don't want to spend my time talking about my case here, but where it sits right now is that the judge in the appeals court is the coordinating judge for the whole appeals court. She's the one that determines where this case is going to go, what judge it's going to go in front of, all of that, who's the prosecutor, all of that stuff, you know. So she identified, or she told us basically, what we got to do in the things in the appeal that were wrong or left out. The only thing that was wrong is that we had forgotten to notify the lawyers for Revenue Quebec. And so that for anybody else, this would have been thrown out of court because we're way beyond the 30-day mark for an appeal. So what this established was that she told the court that ordered her court clerk to contact the lawyers in Revenue Quebec, and to even said to email them and email us and to tell them that we would be contacting them to file this appeal, and directed us right where to go, what to do, you know. And so the next day, the court clerk sends the notification to the lawyer for Revenue Quebec, and it comes to us, and we see that, oh, it's a notification that they're going to be hearing from us. Okay, so once they got that, then we wrote them and told them that we will be waiting, writing to them within a week or two, that there was an adjustment in the an amendment that we had to put in the appeal. And what this amendment is it is going to identify that that we're not going any further on this until they appoint the special treaty interlocutor, which is here in so-called Canada. The treaty interlocutor is the Governor General. But as you know, just this past week or last week, whenever, they put a native in as the Governor General. And then immediately Justin Trudeau identifies that that this position is like it's outdated now, Governor General. And so that they're not gonna have a Governor General around much longer. So then this means that it goes then to whoever the Chief Justice is, not the Chief Justice, whoever the head prosecutor is for so-called Canada. And then from there, it goes to the Justice. And then from there, under that Justice, and they all got to represent the same way that the treaty interlocutor would represent, meaning the Governor General. So this is something now that they created a circumstance of where now we can put that there. Now, it was only created out of us holding our ground to the point of where they got caught up in their own red tape. And their own red tape, which identifies that as long as the appeal is started within 30 days. So we started the appeal within 30 days, but it's gone so much longer. We're already 7 months beyond that date where anybody else would have their case thrown out. It wouldn't be permitted any longer. So where this is going is it's going in our next amendment in it is to demand the special treaty interlocutor and that we're not going to do anything else until they have that person there. So that's where that sets with the court case. A couple of other things that you identified, that natives were never defeated, or original peoples, whoever, were never defeated in war. This is true. We were never defeated in war. But what they created was the false flag, as you know, of the British imposed genocidal, clanicidal, elected band/tribal systems on both sides of the so-called imaginary border. And it was those tribal systems and band systems that both of them in 1973, they did not create this. It did not come out of native people. It was created out of the circumstance that the government applied pressure on the native people, which would mean that then, since they're all band system, and basically meaning they're stupid people, they would go in one direction. And with the direction that they went in is precisely the direction that the non-native government wanted them to go into, which is what took place in 73 in the creation of AIM, the American Indian Movement, and here on the so-called Canadian side of the Warrior Society, which was created right here in Kahnawake. Very important for people to understand that the Lakotas, out of the Lakota, it's not that they created it, but the government created the circumstances to make it look like out of the Lakotas rose the American Indian Movement. It's not true. That's government, American Indian Movement. They created that. As they created Warrior Society on this side. And in 73, through that armed standoff, this is where the so-called United States gives reference to where the native people were defeated. Because the Lakotas under AIM in 73 were defeated. And then here, it wasn't so cut and dried in 73. It got carried over to the summer of 1990 here. And in the summer of 1990, the so-called Warrior Society acquiesced. They signed under the provincial. They signed under as being municipal, putting themselves under the band system. So in that sense, then this is where the government says that, oh, the natives have been militarily defeated. But those were not natives. Those are the band's government created Métis. That's who they are. Because that system, the band system, done away with the clan, done away with clan mother, actually creating a law within them saying that you no longer have to have a Mohawk mother to run for their system. Okay, so in that sense, this is where there is a legal definition as to the different levels of status, legal status of the people. And so where we're fighting in our court case, it's completely in the fields of like what you're identifying as sovereign. It's completely separate. It's not part and parcel to their corruptions in any way whatsoever. So on those levels, whatever the government created to say that the natives were defeated militarily, big deal, because those people were not natives. It did not rise out of the Lakota through their law, and the Warrior Society did not rise out of the Ganyangahaga out of our law. It's misconceptions that are placed there to misdirect the people in their understanding, in their application of their own identity. So now anybody who would think of being, hey, let's fight for native rights, well, they automatically gravitate towards Warrior Society or AIM, which is going to put them right into where the government wants them to be. Okay, so on that level, it really doesn't matter anyways, because it's the government that created it. So if we're ever, let's say, in a negotiation across the table, and they said, oh, well, we defeated you in war because of this, well, then we just identify, come on, you created them, that's you. You defeated yourself. You didn't defeat us. So on that level, that's the legal standings of where people, the original peoples, have acquiesced and therefore categorized themselves under a certain legal standing. Because here in 1990, as everybody knows, there was a military invasion here in Kahnawake. And of course, it was a false flag. There's videos all over the internet you can see where the people went out and fought the military. Grab one guy, the late Danny Phillips had this army guy by the neck and were punching him, and other people were fighting, and you could see that they threw army guy off of the bridge and down onto the rocks. But in all the videos, you do not see any kind of physical aggression or even defense by the Canadian Army. They were sent there as a false flag to have the people, just to agitate them to the point of where, through fear, that they gravitate right into the trap that they wanted. And so in 1992, 2 years after 1990, myself, my father, and my brother Keith were in court fighting jurisdiction. And in the very next courtroom, in the Longhouse Court, which is a municipal court, all the people in the Warrior Society who fought on the bridge against that army when they landed here in 3 Hercules helicopters, not Hercules helicopters, the Hercules is the plane. Those big helicopters there, double.
Hueys.
The military helicopters. 3 of them landed here. Chinooks, yeah. And when the people fought them, then through all the videos and that was present, that the people from Kahnawake took the pictures, and somehow through sellouts here in Kahnawake, the government got those pictures and then charged all of those people. And they were in the courtroom next to us, and they were under, the Warrior Society was under the band system's lawyer. And that band system lawyer made a plea bargain for them that they would all plead guilty, but they would get absolution. So in that sense, the so-called Warrior Society was, if you say the military of the Kanien'kehá:ka or the Mohawks, that then they were defeated militarily. But it's not true, it's a false flag. Okay, so anyways, for that to be out of the way, now just to get back to what Lisa, what you identified, or the question that you asked of how can we do it? How do we get to the place of returning to matrilineal? Well, from this house, this is where, as you know, what we have identified as, what we identified as that the 2-row wampum was presented to the wrong people. At the time when we had met the Europeans, it was all just guys that were here. And we know that what kind of guys they were. These were the lowlifes, thieving, raping, murdering pirates. And so you cannot make a treaty with thieving, raping, murdering pirates. It's impossible. But this is the splinteredness of the non-native society, of that you can never talk to one and think you're going to get a representation, or you can't talk to even whoever the representative is and think that you're going to get a representative position from them. It's impossible, because what they called us, the Dutch is who named us the Mohawks, because what it means is a pit of snakes, when the reality is it's the white people that are the pit of snakes, because they're all splintered. And you might think that, hey, you're talking to a snake so that they can represent the other snakes. No, they can't, because they're splintered. They're like that mythical creature. What is it? The hedron, where you cut off one head and another 2 more pop up. Well, with the non-native people, the white Europeans, you cut off one head, 10 more heads will pop up. So this is how we know that war, physical confrontation, is a misnomer. You cannot ever win. It's impossible to win a physical confrontation. Neither side will ever win. It's only for stupid people. And that's male dominance. And so how to get out of male dominance, what we seen here when we applied, or when we first made the two-row wampum with them, it was with these warmongers. So a couple of years ago, as you know, we concluded that in order to have a proper dialogue with the non-native people, with the white people, the Europeans, in order to have a proper dialogue, the two-row wampum must be placed into the hands of the non-native women. Because then that is representation. But there is no white man or non-native man, European man, that can represent anything in this world. Because he, again, like you pointed out, is on that pirate ship that's been turned over, and it's upside down and it's backwards, end for end. So he cannot represent anything except the chaos that he is. And so, as you know, Lisa, we then, in order to present the two-row wampum to the non-native women, they had to be organized. And so this is where we set out to create a chance, a lifeline for all people. And this is the way that we view it, is that I am not against the white man. He is against me. I am his brother. We are one. We are not separate. It's his mind that has been splintered from the reality of creation. And so he has this concept that we are different. We are not different. We are the same. We come from the same mother. We have all the same physiology about us. We have all the same emotions, the same everything. It's just that he has lost his path. He has gone corrupt. And so we created the woman's nation to be able to free the woman at the same time, because at the same time, this is what the concept is. Women are pushed down like this. You're in jail. Now you have to break out of jail. You're not just going to waltz out of the jail and say, oh, okay, we're going home, we're going free. No, you can't do that, because there is, in fact, a jailer keeping the women in that jail. And if you tried to walk out, that jailer would know that at whatever, in whatever way he's alleviated the pressures off you, you know, to get you to be complacent, those things will then tighten back up on you. It's like as if you think you can walk out of jail, maybe your jail cell was open, well, he'll come along, push you back in your jail cell, close the door, and if you try to open it again, then he'll lock it. So you have to escape from jail, just like in a movie where you got to be in a prison break. All the women on earth have to break out of a prison, which means that as you apply, like what was said earlier, quite simply, all you got to do is apply it. It's not just simple as that, as applying it, because you have to, at the same time as applying walking out of jail, you have to have the males who are keeping you in jail, you have to have them release the pressure. So it's a two-tier thing as to how we just do it. And so how we just do it is we got to look for wherever infrastructure has been established to actually facilitate these actions. And I'll say, and doesn't mean it's so, but from everything that I see, that the woman's nation is the only thing that is giving a collective voice to all women on earth, to be able to empower them to escape from their jail and to reattain the law that was killed out of them. So it's a two-tier thing. To say, just do it. Yes, I said it, just do it, because I am at the same time alleviating the pressures off of you. Now, of course, that's up to anybody to say if I am or not, but I'm coinciding with the actions that when the women want, let's say you're gonna run 10 feet from that jail. Well, we're doing something that will like protect you in that 10 feet, the Women's Nation. So Women's Nation application is how we get there, how we do it, because already Women's Nation has grown to the point of where there are now men coming into that under the direction and knowing that they are the secondary to the life givers, who are the primary, who are already there within the Women's Nation. They know that here it is, they're coming under them. So there is already men that are coming to facilitate this. There are these men have already sat in law recital for them to be able to know what are the things that they got to do to facilitate the woman's escape from this prison. We must always think and understand you're not in freedom. So don't think that you got the freedom to just do something. If you know you're going against the system, understand that that's the system that has been squeezing you to death, and that when you try to break out of their psychological constructs, they will then once again put physical constructs there to keep you there. So there is a very small window of opportunity here. Before they realize, once again, they got to put those physical constructs there. It's prior to that where we are dealing with things on the psychological level, on the intellectual level. And so at the same time, all of this is, law recital, so that the women who are breaking free, so that they don't just go and say, well, I want to do it this way, because then they're already restricted in male dominance. Their minds are already taught male dominance. And if they're just going to do something the way that they think, it's based on the structure of thought that has been placed in their mind, which is male dominance. So it must be law. And so law recital is provided for the women within the Women's Nation and the men who are coming to support. And so there is a very tiny snowball that we're rolling until it gets big enough and where it will have its own inertia and it will roll on its own. But for this to happen, it's you, the individual. Now, for us, we know that, well, a lot of people might say, well, they're not going to come into this construct of Women's Nation because we created it. No, we didn't create it. It came into being out of necessity. And it's only necessity when the people who are trying to be free and want law and justice, when they arrive at a certain point of breaking out of that jail and you discover, hey, there's a 10-foot fence here. So now I got to deal with jumping over a 10-foot fence. Before I was there, I didn't have to deal with it. Now I have to create the methodology of how we're going to do this, span that 10-foot fence without being detected by the jailer who does not want you to escape. So there is a lot of things that has to be done at the same time that cannot all be done by the women. Yes, women, just apply it. But to apply it, you got to have men around you who are no longer oppressing you. And that just because guys have maybe want to talk good to you, and say, hey, while we're talking, we'll say all the right things. But then later on, you might feel the pressure. So just because a guy says something, you do not take it as like written in stone or it's law. No, he has to prove it. He has to do something tangible to make sure that you are secure physically in what you believe you can do. You can believe you can do it. Hey, we got the right to freedom. Do you? Do you have the right to freedom? No, you don't. That's the fact. So the men have to create provide the physical safety zone as to where you can be free, how far you can be free, So no matter what, for life givers, this may sound very male dominant, but no matter what, your freedom is always dependent on the males. If they're a male, if they're a man, if they're a life giver. Three different and many other different levels of man rising, a guy rising to manhood, where the words have, the actions have to coincide with the words. And so Women's Nation is the only place where you'll see and ever hear of a law recital exclusively for women. You'll never hear of this anyplace else. And so this is the way of how to do it. Now, just because I'm saying this is the way, doesn't make it so. But what I will say is that, well, try to find the quicker route out of that jail cell where you can be free, where it's not going to be something that, hey, you can get out right now today, but you know what? Tomorrow you'll be dragged right back into your jail. You'll be caught again. And even in another way, you won't even realize that you're caught and you're right back in that psychological construct of that jail cell. So, Women's Nation, first, the two-row wampum being placed in the proper place with the women. It cannot be with men. Never. Because men in the non-native world are illegally overpowering. They are overlording the women in their world. So two-row wampum, any legal contract cannot be made with men in the non-native world. Can't be. Because you're always gonna have the lie that you know that they'll shake your hand, but they're behind their back like this, with their fingers crossed. So this is what we know that we got to deal with, and so we got to dot all our I's, cross all our T's ahead of time. Not once we're there, we got to do it ahead of time. So two-row wampum applied back in the proper place to the women from the original peoples, and then what is the relationship? The relationship, as you know, all the non-native people, all the Europeans, all the people from around the world are physically here. But they're not here under law. They're here under war. And so the reality of this relationship of two-row wampum was to bring that male into order as to where he knows and understands once again that he is my brother. And that when he kills me, he's killing himself. Because when he kills me, he kills the knowledge of how to be him. So the next step from two-row wampum being applied to the Women's Nation receiving law recital, from law recital receiving men into the fold. The next step is to have all the people who are physically here to physically be in the proper vein, to be exposed to the ceremony. All the non-native, all the white people are here. Have they ever been exposed to the ceremony to understand the polarity of Turtle Island? Never, no. Even to this day, the majority of non-native men who claim whatever, they've never been in the ceremony. They won't have access to it. Because the reality of them killing us has caused us to retreat to the point of where, as you know, you probably heard this, where the majority of native people are saying, don't teach the white people. No, they got no business in our ceremony. They got no business learning our law, our songs. They got no business. How could they not have the business, be in the business of doing that? Because if they're not, then they're here in Turtle Island in the business of destroying it. If they can't be conducive to it, they must be shown how to be conducive to it because they are from a different polarity. In my flashlight, there's a certain way that you got to put the batteries in there. The positive has to go to the positive end. But when, like you said, Eagle Eye, it's turned upside down and it's flipped backwards. So that means that their positive is to their negative. Their flashlight cannot work. So they need to know how, they need to be shown how to adjust to the polarity of Turtle Island. And the only way is through ceremony. But to get to ceremony, white man in the current state that is in, he'll never get there. And so we have devised a method of how our brother, who has lost his pet, trying to kill us, we've devised a method of how to calm him down, neutralize his craziness, and bring him into the ceremony. Now, this has already happened. It's already working. It's being done. There's people already being affected by it, and it's already altering the things that they're doing now. And now it's these people that are taking the directive of the Longhouse, say like in hemp unity, it's these people that are taking that directive and who are applying it. They are now, maybe not like 100%, but they're beginning the journey of walking down this path of being in the proper polarity when in Turtle Island. Now, if and when they ever went back home, you're going to be in a different polarity again. You're not going to be, if you're switched, the battery switched to work proper, and you go back to the other place where the contacts are switched around, your battery can't stay in the same place. It's going to have to be switched also. There's a lot of two-row wampuming that has to be done. And from what I've seen within my own people is that there's nobody left who knows how to two-row wampum any longer. I can say it's just us now, but that's a matter of perception, and I won't take away the little oxygen pockets that if you're diving underwater and you're going to run out of oxygen, you're going to die. I won't take those little oxygen pockets away from no one. They got the right to take that little breath of life that will keep them going until they can make it to what we identify as the calming pool, where the waters are calm. Because right now, the white man's waters are in turmoil. It's crazy in here. It's like the worst raging river whirlpool ever. I can't see how, in the non-native world, how the Europeans can I can't even see how they can even feel good about themselves. How they can just be normal. It's impossible when you do these things that lead you to self-destruction. Yeah, okay, so yeah, all of that now.
Yeah, I agree with what you're saying, Stuart. But is Eva still listening? She'd mentioned earlier about her area of knowledge, expertise. I was wondering if we could hear from her.
There's 6 hours difference in their time zone in Germany.
Yeah, it's what I was thinking about. If she's 7 or 8, 7 hours ahead, eh?
Hello,
Here she is.
I'm still here.
Perfect.
I'm still here.
Cool.
Yeah, so I'm really, really deeply impressed with this conversation, and I'm really grateful to be part of it and that I ended up in it with you all. Really, I feel deeply inspired and deeply moved by all the understanding and wisdom shared here. So thank you so much for letting me be here with you. I wanted to just say that I have basically, I seem to be getting some clarification about what I'm here for through hearing all of you speak. And one of my aspects of work in the world is to bring the understanding of spirit and the oneness of all of life back into embodied living. And as I live in the UK, I live in the middle of the, of the European world and where that is at the moment. And it's not an easy task. what I'm here to do and what I'm here to bring. But hearing you all just is giving me a lot of strength and inspiration to move more fully into it. And one of the things I have been exploring, which I'd love to share with you, is how to bring the oneness of life, the spirit of being, back into language. We have spoken a lot about language, and I've written a lot about it and researched that a lot, how English language is basically the language of separation. It's a language of superiority and inferiority. It's a language of subject and object. It's all that. And once we begin to see that and what that does to our psychology, we will just begin to understand that that's, it will help us understand that that's not who we are. And when we begin to learn to bring the language of oneness and spirit into the English language, which is what I'm attempting to do in my work, and then to embody that fully through the physical being and realigning the psychology, the mental aspects back to that reality of one life, of the female being, all of manifest existence, or one could say the only room, the only of everything, and the male being the light within that serves and shines and protects and nurtures, and both of them being as one, the light and the manifest existence. That's how I would see it personally. And so thank you for letting me share that. Is there anything anyone would like to respond to in relationship to that? Yeah.
Yes, Eva, I happened to, in the midst of this tonight, I was urged to go to check your Facebook profile, and you will see that I put a care sign on your oneness, because that is the whole key. We see the differences, but it's this oneness that we're supposed to be aspiring to. And that is how we defeat this whole issue. This is where we all come together. So even though there are various differences, we're not all dressed the same. But if we can stay in this unification, we can do this. That oneness of purpose, oneness of heart, as you mentioned, oneness of soul, mind, and body. This is what is happening, and it will continue. So I'm just going to say it is in the English lexicon. So I was very happy to see it on your page, your profile as well. Thank you, Eva.
Yeah, wonderful to make the connection with all of you. And yeah, I hope to see you again in other conversations and connect more, and who knows what can come out of those conversations.
Eva, while you're there, I'd like to take the advantage of just to give you a perception from the original peoples of Turtle Island, the perception that we have of the European.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Yeah, please go ahead.
Okay, this is what we see. Something has happened here on Earth. If we look at Earth as, let's say, like a microbe in a petri dish, and we're in a laboratory and we're looking at it, and then all of a sudden this microbe or a cell, there's something gone crazy in it. This is what we're looking at on the Earth. Something has gone crazy in this petri dish of the Earth. And what it is, this is what we identify. And this is going to sound real crazy, that the Europeans are subject to an alien invasion. This is recorded in your religions, that it identifies that in your religion that some angels, for some reason, they're angels that fell from the sky and they mated with the earth woman. Well, no, those weren't angels, those were aliens. And they raped the earth women. And they put their demon seed in the earth women, thereby corrupting the petri dish of Mother Earth. Because once you take this culture that's, from within itself, and you take some foreign object and insert it within there, then you're going to have a corrupted whatever the original thing was. It's corrupted. This is fully recorded in your religions, identifying this. It identifies it's the source of the so-called holy wars that you have been involved in forever, since as far as you can remember. You can only remember to that time. How is this? That we have a collective memory on this side to the very beginnings of time, our creation story. But the non-native people, basically, your memory only goes back, about 3,000 or 4,000 years? We could say 7,000 years max, but it'd be hard to establish that. You could say maybe approximately 3,000 or 4,000 years. That's as far back as the collective memory goes of the non-native people. This is because from that point where you were invaded, my sisters and brothers across the great waters, you have been invaded, and it's corrupted your thinking. It's not your way of thinking, even to the point of where right now you will believe this is your way of thinking, but then when you look around yourself in the world, you feel like foreign in your own home. Because yes, this is your home. It's the only place that you will find safety, here in Turtle Island. Because the secondary, which is that side, it's become corrupted. You cannot have peace. You cannot have love until it's uncorrupted. And the only way to uncorrupt is to address what has happened to you. So collectively, you look from right now where you're at. How did you get here to where what's going on throughout the European world, which is everywhere where Europeans are? How is it that they're in this state of war throughout the whole world right now through religion? This is the poison that has separated you into these different categorizations. It's one being in a schizophrenic mind, and that the schizophrenic identities are fighting against each other. And as we know that within a schizophrenic individual, that the identity that's going to be in control is going to be the most brutal. He's going to be the one that doesn't care about the others, to push the others down, to kill the others even, to rise to their power. And this is a foreign demon seed that has been illegally put into the women of Earth, into the non-native women, into the white women of Europe. We seen this, a cry out from that document about Decus. I'm not going to go into explaining that whole document, just to say, those of you who know that document, that's going back to the 1600s, we see it as a cry out for help from that woman that they called their queen, Queen Victoria, that she identified to us that the women there, are under duress, and they are asking for our help. And how she says this is by identifying to whoever she says is the king chief, her king chief brother here in Turtle Island, and identifying that he, the king chief brother here, has a nephew in her son. So what this means, when we go back to understanding what nephew means, you can't go from the concept of today, because all it means is it's either your sister or brother's son. That's all it means. But if you go back to the meaning of what nephew was and the role that they played in this world, that nephew would, if one side accidentally killed another or whatever, it was their nephew that was sent to take the place, because it had to be your most sacred blood. And so when that woman they called the Queen, Queen Elizabeth, identified, you are my brother, king chief brother. You have a nephew in my son. This has her putting for the first time that the colonizers, wherever they went all around the world, they never put anybody on the same level as them before. They always ruled over them and beat them down. When they done this, this is where we see that the women there sent out an encrypted message in that document to Decus. And that encrypted message is that the women there are under duress and they need us to come and save them. And only the original people of Turtle Island can save the women of this world. And this is the reality that we're left in, because as you know, from your side, non-native men, look what they're doing. And they're going to do it until you are snuffed out. Your ability to procreate is gone, and they have technologically, through artificial intelligence, reproduced your ability to reproduce life and no longer need you. And now we are at the precipice of artificial intelligent nanobots being able to replicate themselves on a scale that will be able to wipe out all life on Earth just like that. Is this a pipe dream that I'm saying? Is it a fantasy or is it reality? We must look at, to understand what is happening, we got to know our past, because if we can align our past with where we are and where we are aligning our trajectory, then all of these things will be in perfect alignment, and there will be only one truth that you can conclude on. You are in a society of suicidal people. People who do not care for life one bit. People who want to destroy you, kill you, snuff you out, and snuff out the human experience altogether here on our Mother Earth, so that whatever this foreign entity is, this alien entity, so that it can do to our Mother Earth to destroy the life force, suck the life force out of it. This is the whole nutshell. What we see has happened to the Europeans. They're under an alien invasion. Just go and read your own religious, whatever, doctrines, whatever the hell you want to call that. And how can you conclude that these things that fell from the sky were angels? If they had sex with earth women, who would be stupid enough to believe such concepts that could not happen any other way except through rape? It only could happen through rape. There ain't going to be no angels falling from the sky mating with earth women, because if they were angels in the first place, they would not mate with earth women. It is rape. Your lines have been raped. And this is the reason why they kill you, to prevent you from remembering what has happened to you. So this is what our interaction with the non-native European is. We're out to save yous from something that is going to be our fate too. You just got to wake up and realize what you's got to fight against instead of fighting against us. Because all the wars that you're waging everywhere on earth, you're fighting against us, because you're fighting against the mother. You're fighting against law. So this is our interaction with the non-native white European people. We come from the position of that you are our sisters and brothers. We are not separate. We have never been. We are within the same culture, that same petri dish. It's like saying that the right arm, when it comes to clap hands, the right hand claps hands with the left hand and says, hey, where did you come from? We came from this. This is our creation, whatever. But for you, it can't be the same thing. How stupid do people on earth have to be to not know and realize that the same process to create the left arm is the same process that creates the right arm, and that they're both the same? They complement each other. They're not opposite. We complement each other. This is where our relationship comes into the reality of dealing with polarities. We have dealt with on the molecular level in your psyche through the two-row wampum. It's like reaching right into the mind of the person whose mind has physiologically been disrupted, to go in there and to rewire it and to put things back into proper order. All you have to do is listen. That's all the non-native people have to do. But yous are all too sure of yourselves. Yous are certain war is the way. And this makes it so that our conversation will never happen. So for you, for any non-native women, this is where I'll just reiterate about the Women's Nation, that we have provided for them, and this is starting on April 8th. It's moving with the two powers on our Mother Earth. Starting on April 8th, that the law recital for the Women's Nation, specifically for the women of this world, a whole law recital just for them. Where in the past, some of you know that law recital took 26 days. The last time we done it, it only took 22 for some reason. But you're looking at least 22 to 26-day process of law recital, which is knowledge from the beginning of time, from the creation story to the DNA of our Mother Earth, how physical matter is created, to how we were in our dark ages, to how we, the reality of how we come to be people of peace is through one woman. One woman here in Turtle Island defeated war. She defeated war with love. One woman. And she is the original clan mother of all the nations. And her name is Jagunsaze. This is all the women of the world should know that name, because any freedoms that you are experiencing, that you are thankful for having, it comes from her. Doesn't come from a European woman all of a sudden getting the right to vote, 80 years ago or something? No, because where are they getting the right to vote? Within male dominance. So is that a European woman's identity? No, it's how you've been tricked. Law recital will untrick you. It will open your mind to see the realities of this world and what, again, how this entire world is divided into the dualities. There is two polarities, and we got to know where that buffer zone is in between us, because as you know, if you take two opposite sides of the magnet, you can force them together. But you know, the energy will push them apart. You could keep them if you're strong enough, hold them there, and you might feel that energy trying to push apart. But what you won't see is on the microscopic level, shards of that magnet on both sides deteriorating, coming off, basically disintegrating. So if you do this long enough, force it long enough, everything will disappear. We're close to that process. We're close to that stage right now. As a matter of fact, we identified that it was 30 years ago. So to do anything, you got to time travel. You got to go back 30 years and do the things that you were supposed to do 30 years ago. I look at this world and I see people now who are my age, and they're coming around and saying, hey, we're going to do this, got to do that. And I say, where the hell were you? When I was a kid, I was doing these very things that you're talking about. I had to, because it's law. And my mother taught me law. She didn't teach me how to be divided. She taught me how to weave. It's only law that weaves. And so I'll leave you with the last thing here as to the freedom to free up the minds of the women to know that everything in this world is originating from within the primary, the life giver, that it all comes through the power of our Mother Earth filtered to you, which comes from the power of Grandma Moon, the beating heart of Mother Earth filtered through the earth to you. So your moon cycles, your moon that visited you, when Grandma visited you the first time, when maybe you were 11 or 12, that sacred moon that she brought to you was supposed to activate you to being her daughter here, her granddaughter here upon Mother Earth, to fulfill the female role of progenerating. Instead, they have taken your mind, adjusted it, where every woman on earth is giving their energy to male dominance. And now women are fighting the wars of men. The corruption is complete. And so the final thing that we bring or offer to the world is the knowledge of what makes this world tick. Grandma Moon. And where the actual time of Mother Earth is played out and where it's determined. All by Grandma Moon. Not by January 1st, not by December 21st or June 21st. All of it is a lie. And so this year, we identified that the winter solstice was not on the 21st. It was on the 19th. It's not a matter of the physical shortest day and longest night of the year. No, because as you know, the winter solstice, which you would think it would be right in the midwinter, but it's not the middle winter. Midwinter is in January and February. But yet, why is the shortest day then and the longest night? Why is it in December 21st? Why is it approximately a moon before the actual midwinter? Because there's a spiritual action that must take place first. I must think about this first, and therefore the thought is there before the physical action. And so the winter solstice, the summer solstice, works the same way. It works by Grandma Moon. And she brings the message of this is the half. And the half was on the 19th. So I'll leave that with you as to that what the Turo Wampum does for this world is that it brings the reality of the polarities together, not based on what one side wants, no. Based on the reality of law which governs both. Yeah, now we'll go on. For myself,
thank you so much. Thank you so much. I really appreciate your offering. Thank you.
For myself, I'm going to have to say that we're going to have to go pretty soon. We didn't have dinner because of the time, and starting to starve now.
Yes. Eagle, did you want me to bring that up or?
No, we can save that for another time if people would like to come back.
All right.
I have some like documentation and things like that that could show, so you can get a better idea of some of these things I'm talking about, right? Citations and actually look up the references and things like that. But I thank everyone for coming. It was a pleasure meeting you all, and look forward to meeting you again. But yeah, I do just want to say one thing in regards to like that presenting sovereignty. Winiscus, he's chief for the Sagawaski Nahiawak. That was the people in northern Saskatchewan I was telling you about before. Like when you were saying presenting sovereignty, you're not actually the only one doing it, Stuart. There's been people doing it for years, right? Granted, you don't know about them, so you may think that, but only thing is that they did their paperwork in the late 90s. And obviously the cops would test them because he would just drive. No plate on his, well, he would travel, not driving, but no plate on his car, right? Get bothered by the cops, things like that, end up going to court. But he always just, and he never signed anything at all. Their paperwork wise, charge going inside, because the most they could hold you is like 30 days anyway. If you don't sign anything. So he would never sign anything. But he'd get to the court. So, you know, and the judge would try and trap him and things. And He told him that he was there under the authority and power of his clan mother. The judge looked at him and said, "What power does your clan mother have?" So he looked at the judge and said, "If my clan mother told me to shoot you dead, you are a dead man, and there's nothing these RCMP can do about it." The judge, case dismissed. I'm just trying to express to you, there are different ways to present your sovereignty. You can stick to it and you can put it to them. The reason why they're bending over backwards is because they are afraid of Indian sovereignty. Because at any moment you might start saying the right things to present yourself in a way to them where they're going to be screwed. And they don't want that. Because trust me, bro, what you're talking about unprecedented, no, it's not. I've had the same thing myself in a few different instances when I've been in court. I've had them literally bending over backwards, the judge, to help me out, giving me the minimum thing that I had a pound of weed. This is before weed was legal. What used to be the penalty for a pound of weed before weed was legal? Quite a bit. He gave me $100 fine. That's unprecedented, given that it was still illegal at the time to have weed, in that amount. But like I said, there's a young buck who's well schooled up on this. He doesn't get bothered by the cops now, but whenever he did, he knew how to present himself, and he literally owned the court. No ifs, ands, or buts. He owned that judge. And he told him what he was going to do, and the judge did it. So that's why I'm telling you these things from experience, that I know it can be done because I've seen it done. I've done it myself to some degrees as well, had it work. So that's why I keep going back to, I'm just trying to, explain to you in that. Yeah, they're bending over backwards, because if you ever do actually start presenting yourself to them properly, they're screwed. And they know it, and they don't want that matter to come out. So they will bend over backwards to try and, get it out of their system. Because the reality is you can just tell them what you want done, and they got to pay you back for your your property that they destroyed and took as well. And that's not something that they want people to know about. So that's, like I said, they will bend over backwards to help an Indian if he has any sort of idea of the concept of Indian sovereignty and that. Yeah, they get scared. I've seen it myself talking to judges. I said, all this stuff that I'm talking about that you don't like me talking about, and he nods his head. Yeah, well, it's real. And he nods his head. Like I said, it's how you present yourself and stick to it, right? They just went about it in the only way that they knew. The savages are on their territory, and who the hell do you think you are, white man? And they just stuck to it like that. And like I said, he literally just told the judge eventually, "My clan mother tells me to shoot you. You're a dead man, and there's nothing these RCMP can do about it." Which is the truth. Because the RCMP don't have jurisdiction to lay charges over a sovereign Indian. In fact, it's the crime of high treason. There's another matter. You're being charged. That's high treason. Screw the appeal. Now what the hell are you playing around for? Charge him with high treason. Present yourself to them as the savage on your unceded, unconquered territory. What is this reserve you talk of, white man? I don't know what you're talking about. I'm on my territory. Period. And you are breaking the law, committing high treason to detain, harass, molest a signatory Indian is high treason. That RCMP is there to keep His Majesty's citizens and subjects from bothering you, not to put that law over you. They're assuming and presuming that, you're one of theirs as an inhabitant, because unless you present yourself to them in that correct way with the correct terminology, then they'll get away with it. But they're still afraid that you might not. Like I said, they do know all about this. They know what they're doing is a complete fraud, a lie, and high treason. And if you ever get to correctly put it to them, that's why they're scared, man. They are scared because it is literally high treason, and they know what the penalty for that is. I've seen the judges literally shaking, scared as... That's the power of Indian sovereignty. That's why I told you that story about the school bus. I'm trying to get across to you the power of Indian clan mother sovereignty. The chief wasn't charged. All civilized nations around the world made it illegal to go past a school bus. And if you do, you can go directly to jail without seeing the judge. Because American Indian clan mothers made it such. That's law. That is sovereignty. Because if you're a sovereign nation, that's what it means, right? It is that term, sovereign, because that means they've got the power over that white man. Because that white man's on your territory. There's no such thing as Canada or Ontario. What the hell are you talking about, white man? You know what I mean? Those guys. You're on my territory. It's unceded, unconquered. You want to talk to me? Fine. Talk to me in the proper way. As soon as you start trying to put that law over me, this is who I am, this is who you are, and this is what you're going to do. But, like I say, these things will come out. There's a lot of stuff in Meredith's writings, and Lisa can share that one. The Great Matriarch. That's one of Meredith's explaining about his grandmother, her story, how he came to be, his story, and stuff like that. Very, very interesting read. A lot of lore in there, knowledge, and there's always more. Rabbit hole just goes deeper and deeper, kind of thing, right? But anyway, it's been a pleasure, all, and I kind of agree with that getting hungry idea as well.
All of us, I am too. I thank you for everyone meeting you and for your knowledge, Stuart, as well as Eagle Eye. Thank you so very much, and for Eva stating your course and staying with us at 3:30 in the morning in Germany there. So I appreciate the opportunity, and for Edith as well, who's with us, or Marie Claude. And I want to wish everybody success as we move forward in the oneness and unification. This will end. We do win. I will tell you that. We win this.
Yes, and that's the thing about the, it's what Meredith says about the Indian religion. It's the one religion in the world that has no color lines. Didn't matter the color of your skin. Where do you pledge your allegiance? And that's that thing about the whites, the Romans and the white tribal, right? The difference is those guys are the ones that are doing all of this shit. Sure, they got white skin, but they're not white tribal people. They're the ones that took themselves apart because they wanted to live by their own rule of law rather than the creators. So they set up an imitation system to it. And things were good in Europe for a while, but over the years, there was battles on and off between the two, the civilized and the tribals. To eventually, like I said, history, the tribes did defeat them in 408 AD. And they had to sign a treaty, by the way, the Romans, and they're still bound by that treaty. And Stuart, when you were saying about the only reason a chief would go over there is if he was invited over there on official business. And I agree with you. And I think that's exactly what happened. Because that's what Meredith says. This thing about Columbus discovering India or America, he had detailed maps of the coastline before he ever left port. He knew exactly where he was going, latitude and longitude. You're not called Indians because he was looking for a shortcut to India. India did not exist when Columbus was alive. It was called Hindustan. He was looking for a shortcut to Hindustan, in which case you'd be called Hindus. You're not, because what it comes from was Los Indios, how he described the savages when he first met them. Los Indios, those without God. Which is true, because God was in the Bible on his arm. He hadn't introduced it to them yet, had he? Los Indios, morphs, Sindios, Indios, indigenous, Indian. So that's where that term comes. Nothing to do with the country of India. India did not exist when he was alive. So there was a treaty signed, though, That's the ones that the Romans are bound by to this day. But the only way you're going to make them be bound, honor that, is by being the same kind of Indian that signed it. And that is ruled by the matriarch, the clan mothers. Because that's what that chief was that was over there. He was representative of the Americus Empire, North and South America. That's how it was known, the Americus Empire. There was one head clan mother for the entire empire at one time, which shows you how well organized the people were, North and South, because they did have every tribe had its own, but there was ultimately one for the entire empire. And the chief for that head clan mother was in Rome in 408 AD. And he was a signatory to that treaty. He signed on and behalf of all the signatory Indians, original Indians, clan mothers, system of government, Indians. So, because I know you mentioned about not going across the ocean and things because of the death of the soul or the spirit or something, crossing the ocean. But then I remember you saying, unless it was for official business. Well, that's what that was. He was invited over because the Romans had been defeated in warfare and they had to do everything humanly possible to protect tribal custom and usage. Clan mothers. But for them to do that, you've got to present yourself to them in the same way that that Indian chief was at the time, as they were, as a North and South, ruled by clan mothers. So he was invited over on official business. Columbus didn't discover shit. There was a chief from, the Americas in Rome in 408 AD. Like, what they teach us as history is his story. It's not the story.
And that's
Anyway.
why the restoration of matrilineal sovereignty is so important. And Stuart, I'm going to ask you and thank you for everyone for being here. But Stuart, would you be so kind as to do the closing?
Sure, very good. Just let me say also how much I like this kind of conversation where if people know they're coming to the table and there's something wrong, we could be pitted right against each other, like ready to fight. But if we know we're at the table for discussion, then everything is on the table to be discussed, knowing that my perceptions might be torn down, that your perceptions might be torn down, that maybe both of our perceptions might be torn down, and a one truth discovered by the both of us. Now, there's only one way for that to happen, is to have meaningful conversation such as this, where both parties are engaged, knowing that what you are doing, what I am doing, is I am you. You are me. I am doing your work. You are doing my work. And therefore is the only way that we can arrive at the perfect interface as to where both parties or polarities, both energies can then exist in the same place and same time together. Yes, we can have a left and a right arm at the same time while being still within one body. So, very good conversation tonight. I thank you for inviting us to it. I'm grateful for the process of always any kind of counsel where to cut through the misperceptions. Okay, so then I'll do it in my language. Onagadiwahi Gajoko, so when I will see you, Snarty. Gazita Rio, Yujits Kahawinoji, and Dudgets going to star. Ronata Runi. Retinura do Gorungagari Gesu. Yetisota Asatanka Garako, Dona, Yetinestazi Hunzagi, Dona Gueguskat, Neganungwe. Retinura do Saw Yerda, Net Kundun Hetzerat Gauis, Aguizani, Ganyatra de Gerdu, Dona Aguego or Quadzari, Anuko Suka. Retinura do Yetisota Gunhan, Nerdon, the Headstone, they're going to go here, that the Hawakwe. Damdawe Aron Hetzera does at Stassera, Neganungwe. Damdawe Aron Hetzera, ne. Assa ni got dard again, Ganyaga Haga, Radinato, Ronata Hruni, Dano Riscarewage. Dam dawi a gwego ona goro gayana rasa go na skano na ori huio kari shunsara dana gazat sansana. That tenu wada do dano skana go Zewa Guego. So we give thanks for everybody. We give thanks and offer the great peace to everyone whose minds were here, and doesn't mean just the people who are physically here. Whoever might see this at some other time in the future, and if it may assist to clearing the path to understanding, then we give thanks to you, because for each person to understand is to put them on that path of realization as to what their role is here upon our Mother Earth. And so we give thanks, because that will mean that that person will alleviate the pressures upon each of us. So we need that person. We need the faces yet beneath the earth to be able to be free, to where they can live the way that they want to, the way they're supposed to, so that we can pass on knowing that we won't have unfinished business, that our children will be safe. All of our little dreams cannot be left in a world where there's insane warmongers. We must protect our little dreams. So nyawagoa to everybody. Dogatena na hoda yadakso. Air the sawat, air the sawat, air the sawat. Kenya hesitates in Ijoeno. Nyawagoa. Dana ona.
Hey.
Thank you all. God bless.
Thank you all.